and take their place on the stage. Dr. H.K. Kaul, Mr. Parijat Chakraborty, Mr. Pradeep Narayanan, Mr. Ajas Lone, Mr. P. Jayarajan, Dr. Archana Kumar. Please come up and take your seats. Many a times, ladies and gentlemen, the very relevance of public libraries is questioned, especially in the digital era, where information is available at the click or touch of a button. Questions like, why a library when there is Google, have often been asked by many who are unable to see the role of libraries in the whole process of knowledge sharing and learning. Also, another reason for such arguments is the non-availability of authentic research or lack of dissemination of such research findings, which clearly articulate what people would like to see happening in the library space when it comes to knowledge services which can be delivered and acquired in various forms. To understand public library service utilization and its relevance to the community, as well as what people wish to get from the Institute in a holistic manner, this session will focus on discussing the government as well as IPLM survey and research in this respect, which would lead to a better understanding of users' perspectives towards the public library and its services. Users' expectations from public libraries and the areas where libraries can work to strengthen themselves. Before we move into introducing our panel, I'd like to share a short film that we have. This film depicts the journey of IPLM Uttar Pradesh in the last 15 months across the 8 districts and 1 central state library where the scale-up phase was initiated. It highlights the transformative initiative steered by 9 librarians and the response of the people who experienced this. So if we could have the film, please.
जानकारी नहीं थी कि इधर भी आया जा सकता है।
मुझे नहीं पता था।
मैं यहाँ सर बचपन से आ रहा हूँ, लगभग 20 साल से, और मुझे ये नहीं पता था कि यहाँ पे स्टेट की सबसे बड़ी लाइब्रेरी है।
मैं सच बता रहा हूँ आपको कि पहले यहाँ लोग नहीं आते थे, इस लाइब्रेरी की गेट के में प्रवेश नहीं करते थे।
चारों तरफ गंदगी का अंबार था और कोई भी आदमी या पढ़ने लिखने वाला व्यक्ति यहाँ पे रुकना पसंद नहीं करता।
पहले जहाँ पे लाइब्रेरी में सन्नाटा होता था, आदम खान के ज़माने की पुस्तकें रहती थी।
उनसे बात करने से एक तो पता चल गया, उनकी बात सुनने वाला आज तक कोई नहीं है। पहले 2 घंटे 3 घंटे सिस्टम का प्रॉब्लम, उनकी बात सुनने वाला कोई नहीं है। वो लोग थक चुके थे।
अभी तक ऐसा कोई नहीं था कि जो इतना हम लोग को मोटिवेट करे।
लाइब्रेरी को देखिए बहुत ही उदात्त भाव से, बहुत ही उदार भाव से लाइब्रेरी को स्वयं जाना पड़ेगा।
जब से ये IPLM हम लोगों के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है, तब से हम लोग छात्रों के साथ कनेक्ट होना की कोशिश करते हैं और विद्यालयों में जाके उनको बताते हैं लाइब्रेरी के बारे में।
ये जो पम्पलेट होते हैं, हैंडबिल वगैरह होते हैं, इसके माध्यम से भी हम पब्लिसिटी करते हैं।
तो लाइब्रेरी का मतलब किताब है, इसके अलावा इधर कुछ नहीं। इस तरह का सोच था, उस सोच से बाहर आके इधर इवेंट भी हो सकता है। ये एक्चुअली एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट रिसोर्स सेंटर की तरह सोचना शुरू कर।
लाइब्रेरी का एक नया रोल बनाना है कि केवल बुक्स का भंडार नहीं है वो।
इस लाइब्रेरी में रचनात्मक एक्टिविटी शुरू हो गई,
जिसमें कि नाटक है, साहित्य है, कला है, उसको अब बच्चों से एक डायरेक्ट रिलेशनशिप उसकी हो रही है। और लाइब्रेरी में बच्चे आके नाटक देख रहे हैं, कहानी सुन रहे हैं, कहानी पढ़ रहे हैं।
अब एक IPL संस्था है जो, उससे हम लोग को इंग्लिश स्पीकिंग कोर्स भी सिखाया जा रहा है। पहले बोल नहीं पाते थे, इतनी हिम्मत नहीं थी कि आपके सामने इस तरह बात कर सके।
इंटरनेट आ गया, तब से हमें खुद ही अपने लिए नॉलेज प्राप्त करने में बड़ा सहयोग प्राप्त हो रहा है।
अगर मेरे अंदर कोई क्वालिटी है तो मैं उसे निखार पाता हूँ। अगर मेरे अंदर कोई मतलब अच्छी चीज़ है, जैसे मैं उसे निखार पाता हूँ, फिर चाहे वो जीके कंपटीशन हो, चाहे पेंटिंग कंपटीशन हो।
यहाँ खेल की हर चीज़ है, जैसे कैरम बोर्ड, चेस, लूडो,
और ब्लॉग्स। सबसे बड़ी चीज़ तो ये है कि आई एम अ हाउस वाइफ, बट हम जैसे लोगों के लिए जो पढ़ना चाहते हैं, कुछ करना है हमें और हमें एक स्टेज चाहिए, घर में चाह के भी आप पढ़ नहीं सकते।
बहुत सारी लड़कियां जो हैं बहुत गुण से युक्त हैं, लेकिन उनको स्थान नहीं मिल रहा है। वो अपने शब्दों में अपने आप में व्यथित होती जाती हैं कि हम भी कहीं कुछ कह पाएँ। सर, हम लोगों का सौभाग्य है कि हम लोग पुस्तकालय में आए और हम लोगों को इतना बड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म मिला को बोलने के लिए।
इंटर्नशिप का प्रोग्राम चल रहा है, इसमें कि बच्चों ने काफ़ी काम किया है। पुस्तकालय की किताबों का कैटलॉग करना, अरेंज करना, काफ़ी मतलब पुस्तकालय की सर्विसों को सीखा उन्होंने, बच्चों ने, जो उनके आगे भी काम आएंगे, पुस्तकालय के भी काम आ रहे हैं।
ऐसे प्रोग्राम होने से हम लोग एक अच्छे मतलब लाइब्रेरियन डेवलप भी कर रहे हैं अपनी तरफ से।
हम तो गारंटी से कह सकते हैं कि हमारे बच्चे जो यहाँ से अप्रेंटिस करके गए, कहीं भी अगर कोई इंटरव्यू होता है तो वो सबसे आगे रहेंगे।
आप अपनी बुक का नाम डालेंगे, हमने सर्च किया, उनको बता दिया कि इस अलमारी में इस रैक पे रखिए।
जब हम एक्सपोजर विजिट करते हैं लाइब्रेरी के स्टाफ के साथ में, तो जिन भी लाइब्रेरीज में हम जाते हैं वहाँ क्या ऐसी चीज़ें हो रही हैं जो कि हम अपने वहाँ अडॉप्ट करके और अपने यहाँ की सर्विसेज को और बढ़ा सकते हैं।
वहाँ का प्रोसेस हम लोग को देख के लगा कि यहाँ पर तो जो लाइब्रेरियन है उसके ऊपर कितना काम है। तब हम लोग को लगा हम लोग तो बहुत कम काम करते हैं।
मंथली मीटिंग से एक्चुअली सबसे ज़्यादा फायदा तो स्टाफ वालों को होता है। स्टाफ वालों को अपनी बात रखने का एक प्लेटफॉर्म मिल जाता है।
कोशिश किया जाता है कि नेक्स्ट मीटिंग तक वो पूरी हो जाए।
फ्रेंडली टाइप का नेचर है कि आपको कोई समस्या है तो आप उनसे शेयर कर सकते हैं।
इतना ज़्यादा विजिबिलिटी नहीं थी। बोर्ड हो गए, जो बोर्ड्स आप देख रहे हैं बाहर जो लगे हुए हैं, प्लस वाटर कूलर वगैरह हो गया, उसकी सफाई का हो गया।
हमारे समय में एवरेज मेरे पास रिकॉर्ड है 7 रीडर आते थे।
जब से IPLM हुआ है तब से हमारे यहाँ सदस्यों की संख्या दिन ब दिन बढ़ती चली जा रही है।
अब हम लोग को यूजर कहते हैं मैडम चेयर प्रोवाइड कराइए, जगह कम पड़ रही है।
एक साल में हमको जॉब में बहुत ज़्यादा सेटिस्फेक्शन मिला है। पहले ऐसे बैठे रहते थे, सिर्फ किताब चढ़ाया और रख दिया। अब क्या है, तरह तरह की एक्टिविटीज़ लाइब्रेरी में होती रहती हैं, लोग आते रहते हैं, बहुत सारे लोग जुड़ गए हैं लाइब्रेरी से, तो अच्छा लगता है। अकेले बैठने में कहाँ अच्छा लगता है।
और लगाव भी पड़ गया और पढ़ने से। मैं डेली कहाँ से मतलब 20-25 किलोमीटर दूर से डेली 20 रुपये खर्च करके यहाँ पढ़ने आती हूँ।
IPLM का मैं कहूँगा आभार व्यक्त करूँगा। जागरूक किया, लोग सोए हुए थे उनको जगाया कि नहीं, ये हमारी ड्यूटी है।
अभी जो भी लाइब्रेरी में परिवर्तन दिख रहा है सब कुछ उन्हीं के थ्रू ही हो गया। हम लोगों ने कुछ भी नहीं किया। क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, पॉसिबिलिटी दिखा है।
लेकिन मैं अपनी ओर से तो धड़ल्ले से एवं 100% कह सकता हूँ कि IPLM का अगर सहयोग न होता तो इसके कार्य के जो हम करना चाहते थे इससे बात हो गई।
जो IPLM का मूवमेंट है वो मूव कर रहा है।
तो कई लोग आते हैं और वो करते हैं, इसे थैंक्स करने के लिए शब्द ही नहीं है।
So you can see how change is gathering momentum in various states, and particularly in Uttar Pradesh. I'd like to now introduce our panel to you. We have the chairperson, the director of DELNET, Dr. H.K. Kaul. He has the wisdom of a knowledge expert with 43 years of experience as a library specialist. Being a visionary extraordinaire and a poet, he established 2 institutions, the DELNET, which is the Developing Library Network in 1988, and the Poetry Society, India, in 1984. On the panel, Parijat Chakraborty, who heads Public Affairs and Loyalty Research, practiced in Ipsos, India, the global leader in market and social research. He has more than 2 decades of rich experience in market and social research industry, and prior to joining Ipsos, in his last assignment, Mr. Chakraborty successfully re-established TNS in social and political sector research in India. Mr. Pradeep Narayanan, Director Research and Capacity Building, Praxis India. He is a human rights activist researcher associated with many rights-based NGOs and campaigns in India, and has more than 15 years of experience working in government, corporate and non-governmental sectors. Mr. Ejaz Lone, joined IPLM Secretariat as the Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist, and before joining IPLM, he worked with organizations like Mercy Corps, Basics, and recently with Breakthrough as an M&E manager. During these associations, he was closely working on design of baseline, midterm and endline surveys, use of RCT methodology for impact evaluations, and design of M&E frameworks, methods, and processes. Just a reminder, those of you who have mobile phones inside, may I request you to kindly keep it in the silent mode. We have several mobile phones going off in the midst of a session, which is very disturbing to speakers who are on the dais. Dr. P. Jayarajan, MBE, Chair of the IPLM Advisory Board. He retired in 2003 as the head of the British Council Libraries in India, with responsibility to manage the largest and most successful library network of the Council in the world. And between 1979 and 2003, he worked in various capacities in the British Council, including as founder librarian of its library in Hyderabad. Dr. Archana Kumar, who will be joining us any moment, is the Associate Professor in the Department of Development, Communication and Extension, Lady Irvin College, Delhi. She has worked on issues of gender, national resource management, ICTs and community radio for development, as well as use and building capacities for the most significant change techniques for M&E of C4D programs. So this is our panel. I'll hand you over now to our chairperson for this session, Dr. H.K. Kaul, who will make the opening remarks.
Parijat Chakraborty, Mr. Pradeep Narayanan, Mr. Aijaz Lone, Mr. P. Jayarajan, senior library professionals, participants, Madam Pilar Chaco, Dr. Shadrick, many other specialists here who have come to attend this very, very important library conference on public libraries. This session is devoted to citizens speak about public libraries. We also have to speak on citizens who don't speak about the public libraries. And their number is much too large. I would like to draw your attention to the relevance of public libraries. The relevance of public libraries from the government side, whether it's the state governments or the central government, we have been seeing over the past several decades that the relevance is diminishing, it's going down. There's not enough funding coming forth for promotion of public library services. And though the Raja Ram Rai Library Foundation is doing its bit to promote public library services by providing funding, books, and other services, but the country is so large and the people are scattered who need education. They are not getting that. In the Indian Constitution, promotion of education is the duty of the state. And today, in the newspaper, I read that even the universities have to raise funds. So therefore, the state governments or the central government, I think the relevance of libraries or public libraries is really a matter of concern, and we have to see how this relevance in the eyes of the government officials, ministries, state governments should improve. IPLM is a wonderful initiative, it's a timely initiative, and we are grateful to Gates Foundation for supporting and developing this initiative, which NASSCOM Foundation is very well making it move ahead and do some good work in the country. But I personally feel the relevance issue, is very, very important. If I talk about the relevance among, of the government, how government is looking at public libraries, I think IPLM's job is to really convince the authorities and the state governments at the center that public libraries cannot raise much money on their own. Over the past century, there have been philanthropists who have established public libraries, but they have done so on their own will. But government has been running public libraries in different parts of the country. And before the advent of the web, public libraries had a great role to play. We know about 19 states have passed the library legislation, but the money that is coming through library legislation, I don't think it is reaching the libraries where the services are deficient. The priorities are changing. I personally feel one of the objectives of this IPLM has to really have an advocacy group that will convince the state authorities and at the center that libraries need to be supported. Now, why I say this, in 1950, when the Constitution of India was made, information was growing, doubling every 25 years. And today, it is doubling every 20 months or less. So therefore, people are sinking in the information overload. And something has to be done. The governments, state governments and the center has to come forward to save people, to give them quality information, quality knowledge. Who will do it? Agencies like Delnet and other agencies, IPLM and others, they are doing the bit they can within their limits. But the country is so big, and I feel that when the information is exploding, when there's information pollution taking place, the government has to understand we have to save people from this pollution. We have to give them quality knowledge, quality information. So this was one aspect I wanted to mention about the relevance from the government's point of view. But there's also the relevance from the people's point of view. Go to a city and ask for, where is the public library? Many of them will say, what is the public library? What do you mean by public library? And many of them would not know. And there's a reason. You see, what is the relevance of public library to an unemployed person who is starving? There's no relevance. Why should he try to think of the public library? What is the relevance of a housewife who has 4-5 hours of free time which she could contribute to the growth of information or development of skills? There is public library doesn't help. What is the relevance to a businessman who wants to increase his business, do better things, have more information about his business in his area? He is not helped. He has no concern about it. For him, there is no relevance about public library. Take the farmers. They don't know. They have no information. They can't get information about the seeds, the pesticides, or information about anything that they want. So I personally feel there's a mismatch between the public libraries and the public. Public feels there is no relevance of public libraries, and the fault is not of the public. The fault lies with the public libraries. And we have problems. The infrastructure is poor. Seating arrangements in most of the libraries are not there. In some states, good work has been done, but most of the states where I travel all over the country, in connection with the Delnet work, And whenever I visit a public library, I feel really sorry. This mismatch between the public library and the public is growing. We have to save the public library. There is no infrastructure. There are no computers. Internet access is not there. They can't provide guidance on new technologies or whatever. Maybe a village needs some information in a particular sector in which it is specializing, the people are specializing. The public library could play a role. Look at what's happening in the United States. For more than 200 years, they have spent billions and billions of dollars on developing public libraries. These are the institutions of learning, the pillars of learning. And when we are here, when we know that people are suffering, people are going to suffer more as information pollution grows further, they will not get the correct information. Who is going to help them? You have to help them. The librarians will have to help them. And we have to train the staff. You go to a public library, in a district library, sometimes one librarian looks after 5 districts. Or sometimes a clerk is in charge of a public library, or a district or a village library. So therefore, I feel the relevance of public libraries is not there, neither in the government's mind, nor in the public. So therefore, the public library is at the crossroads today. The public library, if we don't save it, it's like a ship in a storm in the sea. The storm is of the information growth, information pollution, and the ship will sink if we don't save it. I would like to congratulate IPLM. They are doing wonderful work, but their work has to be supplemented with a lot of support from all over the country, from the state governments, central governments, business industrialists and others, and all of us and all others who are not here. I feel there's much to do, and we have to save these public libraries, otherwise they will disappear. They will disappear. Information will be provided to public by other agencies who have nothing to do with public libraries, who are going to select information which will be subjective, which will not be objective. There's going to be a slant in the selection of information. There's going to be slant which will tell the people, maybe in one city, what kind of information they should get, and with that slant, information will reach there. So therefore, it's a very, very difficult situation today. But unfortunately, our great administrators, who are well-meaning, they don't understand the impact of information pollution. It's happening in the West now. Books are being withdrawn, they are being taken out. Spaces in libraries are being used for various other purposes, you must be knowing. And therefore, this country can't afford that. But at the same time, this country wants latest information for its people. We don't want beggars on the streets. We don't want unemployment. We want knowledge and information to reach our people. So therefore, we are at the crossroads today as librarians, and I'm sure you will give thought to this. I have a great panel today. They have been introduced, and I'm sure I will request the panelists to speak for about 5 to 6 minutes each in the first instance, and we'd like all of you to come up with suggestions, reactions, observations, and let us make it a wonderful session this morning. Thank you very much. I would now request Mr. Parijat Chakraborty, Executive Director and Head of Public Affairs, Ipsos, to start his presentation.
Thanks, Dr. Kaul. Good morning, everybody. It's a great honor of mine for getting this opportunity to take the citizen speak, what the citizen is talking about, what the citizen thinks, what the citizen's wants are, some of the things which Dr. Kaul just painted to be able to share with you. And you may be getting already a flyer, one pager, which has some of this information already, which was supposed to be distributed after my presentation, but nevertheless, you can look at it later. For those who are not so familiar with Ipsos, I'll just paint one slide. We are in all aspects of public affairs research, globally one of the top 3, and as people call it, we are the social research and reputation specialist to understand what the audience are saying, what they're thinking, what do they have in their mind. That's our job. So that we collect that, we assess that, process that, and take to our clients. So that way we are one of the messengers. And that's the reason we do the job of a lot of evaluation. And we are quite proud to be associated with this great movement because we believe that the divides between the haves and the have-nots, which we have been classically hearing about since our childhood maybe, which are typically the financial haves and the have-nots. But today, with the context of a lot of information around, explosion of information and pollution of information, it is the information haves and the have-nots that really divides the world. And this initiative is really trying to bridge that gap for those who doesn't really have it. And we are really proud to be associated with that. As the learning partner, we carried out a baseline survey that was last year, and that was in continuation or in connection with the earlier initiatives around public libraries that we have been involved in, the pilot surveys and all, to understand where we stand, what kind of actions required, what kind of initiatives required. And in the baseline survey, we tried to understand the profile of who are coming to the public libraries, who are not coming, for what purpose they are coming, what are their needs, what are their perceptions, so that once we understand that perspective, we can take actions around that. We can go for all kinds of interventions which are required. And it was quite a comprehensive study. 8 states were around 2,500 odd citizens, a good mix of those who are coming to the public libraries, those who are not coming, and that way it was a very large large-scale activity that we do, so that we can arrive at that what are the responsive and the relevant aspects that we need to really get into, bring into the context, so that the community finds the public libraries as something good for them. Now, who visits the library? Half of the population are less than 25 years. It's not that the public libraries are going to be visited only by the people who are oldies and who have a connection with the public libraries. As we were younger, that time there was no internet or anything, so we have an attachment with the public libraries. Even today, half of the population who are coming to public libraries are below 25 years of age. So we have an option of catching them young. But the gender split really tells us a lot of inclusion job that we need to do. It's on an average, it's 22%. So the people, particularly female, young female, is one of the area that we really need to work on so that we can include them more into this movement. Now, what do they do? And what kind of awareness that they have about public libraries, what they can do about it. And we ask these questions. Sorry about those fonts, may not be readable. We ask these questions to both the users who are visiting public libraries as well as non-users. There are a few obvious things which are associated to a public library that you can read, you can refer, you can borrow books, you can, those kind of things are definitely quite salient. People are aware of it. But anything beyond that, there is a big gap in terms of the awareness. What a public library can do, or even some of the public libraries which are actually offering today, but the awareness seems to be a very big issue. However, it's perceived to be a very important component in the overall welfare of the society. Both the users and non-users, almost to the same extent, express that, yes, it is very important for the welfare of the society. Users also find it a very good place to socialize, because this is one place where you can mix with a lot of like-minded people, you can talk, you can discuss, you can share, you can gather information about services, be it health, education, job opportunities, business opportunities, a lot of that. So that looks like a great area of opportunity with respect to public libraries. So how is IPLS responding? It is conceptualizing, introducing, and publicizing all the new services which are relevant in this, where there is a demand, a specific focus in understanding and delivering the services towards young girls, because that, as we have seen, that 22% of the overall population who are coming to public libraries, of that footfall, are only girls. A huge scope for that. And positioning public libraries as a space for community and socialization. Not only that you come here to read and refer some 30 years old books, right? So those days are gone. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And also creating children corners so that it can encourage the young users, mothers, the kids' mothers, and all. Internet seems to be a very big enabler, because accessing materials for the study, browsing, email, a lot of areas where people are now, using internet for even in the villages and the remote places. And a lot of those people don't have an access to a proper internet connection otherwise. So public libraries really serve a very important purpose in their life for filing online information, online forms, seeking information on government services, a lot of things for which internet is required and they don't have access otherwise. So this is one place where public library plays a very big role here. What will interest the non-users? Because we also know that there's a good amount of people who are never coming across a public library. And like Dr. Kaul said, a lot of people will obviously be asking a question back if you ask where is the public library, what is the public library, right? So those kind of users, non-users, what we can really do to make them come and visit. Obviously, computer is a big enabler. Career counseling is another big area. We know opportunity of employment and business is such a big issue in our country. So these two areas are something everybody, especially the non-users, are really appreciating a lot and they're looking for. So IPLM is actually provisioning public access computers, and this is quite challenging. But if I really see the responses which are coming from people who are using the libraries, they all are very positive about the library officials. 80% of them are saying that they're punctual, they're helpful, they're courteous, they're friendly, approachable, responsive, they're fair to all. That's really something I must say that our library official friends really deserve a clap for that. And it's the kind of context and the challenging situation that they're working within. Their key concerns, lack of awareness regarding the libraries amongst the general public. They even don't know what to do, a lot of lack of directions. Location of the library sometimes is not a fixed location. It's every few years it is changing. Like there are some examples of JNK and all where every 2 years the location is changing, otherwise also. So anything which needs to be compromised, this seems like one area which can be compromised. An inability to organize funds, like what Dr. Kaul just touched upon also. If the libraries have to really raise their own fund, that's quite a difficult one. Given the kind of context they were in, digital drive and everything, how the libraries are going to do that. So in order to keep the public libraries relevant for the society, which is the topic that we are discussing today, one is mentoring and capacity building in the library officials for revitalizing and repositioning the public library so that it becomes relevant for the mass. Advocacy and working with the stakeholders, all the stakeholders who are working in this context for garnering support in form of supportive policies, provision of resources, and whatever lobby or whatever all the other pushing that we need to do, maybe with government or all other authorities, we need to do that collectively so that the environment, the stakeholders' environment is more conducive for the library, and building partnership with agencies and institutions that can help in delivering in these great missions. So with that, I come to the close of my observations about Citizen Speak. For any question, I'll be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. May I now request Mr. Pradeep Narayanan to kindly make the presentation. We have, if you can limit to 5 minutes each, then we have some discussion time.
Good morning, all of you. First of all, let me congratulate IPLM for, it's quite innovative to have a session like this, which is Citizens Speak About Public Libraries, and that too on as a plenary, and that too on the first day in the session. This shows how much importance citizens as a constituency is being given, which I have not seen anywhere ever in any conferences. This is the first time I've seen it. My heartiest congratulations for this. And thank you, NASSCOM, for giving me this opportunity. Praxis is an organization that works on democratization and participations. We have never worked on an area like library. So therefore, I'm here just as a citizen and nothing else. But, we have worked on another really equally interesting concept, which is playground. For me, I see there are 4 things which are important on, the playground. One is that everyone loves playground. There's not a single person who doesn't love. But playgrounds are disappearing. Playgrounds are becoming park, and parks are becoming parking spaces. Unlike other spaces like school or family, a playground is all about joy. It has no expectation. Children go there without any expectations of excelling there. And the third is that every child while entering playground feels that playground is not controlled by anybody else. It's neither controlled by the teacher, nor by the family, nor by the parents. So therefore a child feels liberated. And finally, the children learn a lot from playground, maybe even more than anywhere else, from the skills of negotiating, planning, tactics, respecting rules. So to put it in correctly, it builds citizenship. Similarly, library have the same characteristic. You feel liberated when you enter library. There is no formal expectations of yourself or as well as from others. You can be as creative you want to be. There is hardly any control. You feel it is your own. It is empowering as you feel that entire knowledge is at your command and no one is a barrier. So library is also about creating citizenship. As Nehru said that governance is afraid of change. And what Malala said, the terrorists were not afraid of guns and army, but of a girl with a book. So very presence of a library in a neighborhood or village is a vital as a creation of democratized relationship. So public spaces require islands of empowerment. As the documentary which was shown earlier says, that libraries actually build communities. Now, the reaching the unreached is a wonderful concept, and it is the most important for any program. As has been stated, it is a movement. It's not an organized project or anything. It is a movement. But first principle for a strategy to reach the unreached is to acknowledge that the world is not equal, and in India at least, we need to recognize that there is gender and caste-based discrimination. And the study clearly says only 22% women are the users of the library. The second principle is also to recognize that knowledge system of which library is a part itself may be hegemonic. Dr. Ambedkar states about the library, representation of experiences from every section of society in the knowledge system is the transformative role that a library can play. So he realized that it is important for equal access into the library, not only of the people, but also of the materials within library, the books within the library, knowledge within the library, how equitable it is. That is also a deciding factor. And the third principle is that reaching the unreached is not a technical process. It is about power differential, and library does not contain just books. It is a reservoir of all future social, political movements that you and I want in this society in the near future. When I stayed in London for almost like a couple of years, and then I went to British Library, and the only thing, which was it was a kind of an anniversary of Karl Marx, and the one thing which they wanted to showcase was about the desk in which the Karl Marx used to sit. And a guide who was helping us as a student counselor, he was telling us, we all feel that the Das Kapital was written by Marx, it was written by the library here, because its knowledge belongs to the entire library. So I think that's how I would look at the library, as it's the future for us in terms of socio-political movement. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Narayanan. Mr. Ajaz Lone, you are requested to kindly make your presentation.
Good morning, everybody. I think the difficult job for me is that Mr. Parijit has taken half of the presentation in terms of doing the fact sheet. So I have to do the rest of it. Not going to the findings, but talking about how IPLM conceptualized the idea of baseline, and then the relevance of the baseline vis-a-vis the services we deliver in the intervention libraries. So we started with a baseline of about 55 libraries, which includes about 41 district libraries, a sample size of about 2,500 people, like half and half of users and non-users. And the idea was pretty simple, that we actually need to know what's going on in public libraries where we intend to work before we design something as part of the intervention and as part of IPLM, like vision and mission. And there were challenges in terms of what we couldn't find on ground was like a ready-made data for us, or what has already been collected, and what we wish to do in process of the baseline survey. So one of the biggest challenges we wanted to we faced in the baseline survey was who are these people coming to the public library vis-a-vis their gender profiles and the age groups, the occupation, etc., etc. For users, we could get it easily, but for non-users, we actually had to go to the peripheries nearby the public libraries and actually ask for people, have you ever visited the library? And what were the reasons which were coming up that you have not been able to visit was that, if I cite it here, the people saying that they don't have any information about public libraries per se. So they really don't know whether a library is there, which could be next to their door or in the next street. And the second thing is that they're busy with some other work, like they don't prioritize going to public libraries while as they do other works in their routine life. The third important thing was that they see the relevance of college library, and this is more particularly in terms of the student section who were as part of our sample respondents for the baseline. And in terms of what they do when they even go to the public libraries, what was emerging and what Mr. Parijit said in his slide is 3-4 things which is common is borrowing book, reading a textbook, the newspaper, etc., etc. But if we see that what has not been done and making public libraries relevant for the communities, and what users or non-users say about is, I think when Mr. Parijit talked about it, the use of computer and internet services, both users and non-users, more than 90% of these have an agreement that if this kind of a service is available in the public libraries, they may surely not visit, but they intend to, and the likelihood of visiting these people will be more. So that's one thing which was emerging from this baseline survey. The second thing was that they not need only computer and internet, but what do they do with these devices and the facility in the internet in the public library? They also need career counseling. So if it's a computer-enabled services, more likely they're going to use it. They also need the knowledge about business, our business startups, etc., which was coming up as part of the baseline. So again, the ICT becomes a base for the service. So and knowing this, IPLM actually. We didn't do much of it because we know the demand is huge. We could give a few hundred computers to our intervention libraries, an idea of having an internet facility there. But then how long would it sustain is a question that we all need to address in this form. So if IPLM is going to sustain the internet service and computer and with computer facility there in the next few months, so how do you keep the momentum going is all we need to address it. And I can tell you, as part of the baseline, the users are complaining about the bandwidth speed, the reliability of the internet. We all struggle with daily. So if you're like, we sit in this hall, we have a 4G connectivity, mobile internet is there, but if you just move about 100 kilometers away, it's a different story. You are just reduced not even to 3G network, but to 2G network in some cases. So on the one hand, we are saying that we have to have ICT, computers, we have to have internet, we have to have internet-enabled services, career counseling, healthcare sessions, business information. But on the other hand, we have a fragile internet connectivity. So would it work or not is all that we need to address collectively. And interestingly, I think the librarian, the good news is that people are not like unhappy with you. The users are not happy because 80% have said that you're doing good job. So the question is that we IPLM librarians and all the relevant people, the stakeholders, how do we address the collective problems of the public libraries is more to be answered. And after the baseline, after we had these findings available, we started to plan about the new services like English-speaking courses for people, like children, at least up to 6th standard. We could get the materials available in the public libraries. In most of our intervention libraries, and not sure about if it has been introduced or if it's working or not. And then the challenging part in terms of the data, which we were struggling, is we also thought that, okay, fine, we have services, we have internet, we have a good connectivity, we have career counseling, but do we know who are these people who are consuming these services? We don't have an answer even for that. So in order to answer that question, we introduced a checklist, which is about 186 variables and about more than 500 data points to be collected on monthly basis in a library. And we did a training for about 37 Inili innovators in 4 different places, and 4 of our intervention partners to take the training forward related to M&E, and that was concentrating exclusively and specifically on the use of checklist. So what this checklist is about is basically to collect monthly information about who are the people visiting in the libraries, what do they do in the library, like do they use a book, do they use internet, do they actually go for like surfing, or do they actually come only for just socializing. So we don't have an answer for that. So in order to have this checklist in place, we could collect the first quarter of data from January to March 2017, but the surprise was we had more than 40% of data errors. I mean, not to blame anybody, but that's a struggle because we are trying to do something very new in the public library for the first time, so we do expect challenges. In the second time, from April to June, we have still to receive the full checklist from all about 106 libraries we directly work with. So the big question is not about where do we have sufficient services? Yes, we should have. Do we have a good internet connectivity? Yes, we should have. Do we have sufficient funds? Yes. But then are all these things based on some evidence? I don't know. I mean, that's a big thing. That's what we are here like to address this, reaching the unreached. So I can tell you in the M&E world, I mean, in at least Mr. Parijit, I'm sure all the panelists would agree this thing, that if anything is not substantiated with evidence, and you're gonna say that my public library is doing wonders, but I have no data to substantiate that information. So it could be doing wonders. I'm not saying, when I visited about more than 40 to 45 public libraries across about 8-10 states I visited, I found libraries doing quite good job, but what they lack is that storytelling is not happening. What are people doing there? So we try to capture that information through this use of checklist, and also the other piece of collecting the story of change. And when meeting librarians, the worry is that what is the story of change? Like, how do we collect it? It's not that you have to say, what do you do from 9 to 5 or 4 to 6, Monday to Sunday, or like 6 days a week in a library. It's about that one thing you think has actually changed the library in a whole. It could be children coming to your library and they having fun time in your library, because they are already loaded with 8 hours of like education in their schools. So if you try to dose them with the same service, definitely not doing a good job. But if you try to give them some recreational time, definitely doing a good job. So these are the things which needs to be substantiated and captured, needs to be translated into like real-time information. Yes, I missed it. So we also tried to collect the real-time data using the pop-up survey initiative. It's a software which is installed on all our computers, which has been dispatched to the intervention libraries. So the software, what does the software do is, we didn't want to overburden the librarians because they are doing already many things with collecting information both from the user's point of view and from the institution point of view, which is the library. So this software has a direct interface between the user and the computer. So every time a person goes into your library and accesses that computer, a pop-up will come up, ask few questions to the person that how have you been able to access the library as a whole, and it closes. So librarian is not overburdened to actually collect that information. So we have still to say that whether that pop-up is a success or not, and how do we replicate that was that the Global Libraries Program in Romania did it very successfully, about 2,500 public libraries, and collected this information. South African Global Libraries Program in South Africa, working with National Library of South Africa, is planning to do it about, I don't know, 1,000 Pilar can do the numbers. So they're actually replicating the software. So it has a relevance. We all need to learn that how public libraries are becoming relevant, how this change is happening. I still see, even though with all the challenges true as of date, that the public libraries have a huge relevance. Because, I mean, 80% of people saying that not only we socialize, but we both users or non-users. If you give us these 5 things or these 10 things, we will definitely come and try to visit your libraries. So they would have otherwise said, no, we have internet access otherwise at home, why should we come? And by the way, it's the people who said yes to internet, who don't have internet available at home, or don't have mobile devices like smartphones, or the left out communities. And I found not only in India, we have stories from Romania. I visited South Africa recently. We have stories from South Africa also saying that who are these people who are actually visiting public libraries for internet? They have no access to smartphones. They're only using feature phones with just one phone at home. So we are all there geared up to make the difference. The only thing is that we actually have to shape up ourselves and collect, while we deliver the services, we also have to collect the evidence for that service which we are delivering. I'll leave with this thought, but just a request to all the librarians, the stakeholders we work with, the partners, the directors, that we will be coming back to you with those fact sheets, collecting story of change. Please help us to gather the evidence for whatever we collectively do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lone. Thank you. And now I request Mr. P. Jayarajan to kindly make his presentation. Thank you very much.
Everybody, first of all, I want to put on record what Kaul Sahib said this morning. I think every word of what he said is absolutely right, very relevant. And we are in such a situation, unless we, at this stage, make a major intervention, I think the future of public libraries in India is a big question mark. The government has its own priorities. We have not been able to prove to the government that we are making a substantial contribution towards the development of the nation, development of the states, development of the region. I think let us use this as one more opportunity to demonstrate to the government, yes, we can do it. Maybe a coincidence. 2 surveys happened around the same time. The outcome of one of the surveys done by Ipsos was presented before you. Another survey commissioned by Raja Ram Mohan Roy Library Foundation was done by another major market research agency, IMRB. That report is in the final stage. I was involved closely with the both surveys, in fact. Not only me, Dr. Kohl was involved, Dr. Prasad was involved with the IMRB survey. So some of us know a bit more about this, how all these things happened, and what is the outcome. I thought I am the only librarian here to speak about the surveys, so I thought I will just touch upon some of those things. To prepare for a market survey, after all, we librarians don't know much about how market surveys are done, and the market research officials, they have no clue at all how public libraries function. And what is it actually, public library? That is their knowledge about public libraries. So in our own interest, we had to educate the people associated with the market research in those companies about public libraries, how they work and what we want. And they were, I must say that, listened to us very, very carefully, designed the questionnaire, which we refined again, re-refined again, and they presented, they suggested to us the methodology that they will be following. We made a lot of suggestions, comments. They incorporated all those things. About the sample, they had their own ideas. We suggested our own ideas. So we came to some kind of a compromise on that. I must say both the surveys were done very professionally. Very professionally. The outcome of both surveys are more or less complementary. There is no conflicting findings. And we have these reports more or less, I would say, in front of us. Or at least very soon, both the report will be available to all of us, and could be a good starting point for us, very good starting point. Unfortunately, nothing like this has happened in India, probably never happened. Though RRLF did conduct a survey about 15 or 20 years back, but nobody knew about that survey. That is with RRLF. That was a statewide survey, that time done by Nielsen. ORG, is it ORG? ORG Nielsen or something like that. It was about 15, 20 years back. So, as you have just seen the findings of the survey, it has come out with a lot of very, very important findings. I must say the most important one is the kind of public support for public libraries. 97% of our users say public libraries are important in a society. 97%. Even non-users, people who have never used a public library, I think about 87% of them said public libraries are important for the welfare of the society. What else you want? That is a kind of public support for public libraries. Every politician should be interested in that figure. Every minister should be interested in that figure. After all, that is your catchment, more than 90%. I think it is important for us to tell the world that this is what the public in India's view about public libraries. We don't do that. Just saw another Pew Research report about a week back. I think the market research is done. The third day of the report, the highlights of the reports are out for people to see. The Carnegie Trust report, widely circulated, widely made open to people. We have that, but unfortunately, we keep it ourselves. So I don't want to go to the intricacies of market research or what has already been said. I will go to the last page of my presentation, skip all other things. We have a market research report. IPLM. It is more or less the final report. In fact, we wanted to release it today, the report. But due to some technical reason, we could not do that. But I was assured. Are you there, Tripti? Yeah, Tripti is the person who did work with us for the last more than 1 year on this. And she assures that can be published a final copy in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So watch this space. The report will be available to you to see in a couple of weeks' time. When a report is done, what we should do about it? We have a report with us. First thing is release it at the earliest point. No point in keeping with you in the office, in the drawer of the director or anybody. Release it. That's the first thing. Let people see it. Let people know it. Publish it as widely as possible. Make public the highlights of the survey. Send copies of what you call is a snapshot of it to all the media, newspapers. We will, on behalf of IPLM and Ipsos, I say that we will send a summary of the findings to all the partners and all the people who are present here. We have your email IDs. In 10 days' time, I think we can do it. A kind of a brief summary, a one-page summary of the findings. Translate it to your own state language, whether it is Bengali or Gujarati or Hindi or Malayalam, and send it to the vernacular newspapers. Let it appear in all the newspapers in India. I don't know how many hundreds of them. At least a paragraph on what people think about public libraries in India. Will you do it if we send? Send to your contacts, people in the media, and let it appear in the newspapers in your own states. Should be widely publicized. Write about it, or ask people to write about it in newspapers. Write articles about it. I am sure you can produce hundreds of PhDs based on these 2 reports. That much information is in that. Let all stakeholders, librarians, we are only one of them, know about it. The corporate houses, the NGOs, the educational institutions, the government, let everybody know about it. We have done it. This is the findings. Let us tell that. And use the findings for putting, I won't say pressure, but advocacy purposes. Let the government know the public, like public libraries, 97% of people are with us. Do something. Give some thought to it. And I am sure somebody will at least plan some questions in the parliament, in your own state assemblies, about all these things. These are all these will help actually the public library sector. And finally, what we should do is, it is in our hand. It has come out with a lot of suggestions. For example, the non-users said, the question was, what will make you use public libraries? The answer was, okay, you provide XYZ new services, we will use public libraries. I think let us consider those suggestions and implement what is immediately implementable and others on a, what we call is on a priority basis. So the reports, I think we that is in our hand, we should respond to that actually, what the public has said us. The public is interested to know what happened to the surveys you did. Let us talk about it to them, people. Let us publicize it. Let the media people know it. Let the politicians know about it. Let the government know about it. Let the library science schools know about the students. Let the teachers know about it. Let everybody know about it and publicize it widely. And we will use it, IPLM, to take it to the government sector, to the ministers, the MPs, the secretaries, the bureaucrats, etc. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Archana Kumar.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not a librarian. I'm not directly associated with the library movement. So when the request came that would I like to speak or be part of this, I said I needed to evaluate that where am I and how do I position myself. So the outset, I just want to tell you about my department and the work we do. I teach in the Department of Development Communication and Extension. And the core to our department is community outreach and working with communities and understanding and developing programs that are responsive to the needs of people. So if that is core to us, looking at libraries and looking at the movement of libraries, I think I'd like to just share some of my thoughts. Some of my students have been volunteering with the IPLM movement, and I think through their insights, I'd like to share some of my ideas. A lot has been said, and my previous speakers have been able to flag some very interesting aspects, and I would like to reflag them also. At the onset, when we look at libraries, we need to also understand, I think, three things that are very core. The first, I think we've discussed in the morning, and Professor Kaul very beautifully highlighted this, that we are in the middle of what is called the information revolution. There is so much of information about us, and today we in the area of communication say information is power, because those who have information are able to make choices and make decisions that are going to impact their lives and improve their quality of lives. However, in communication, we also say another very important thing, that there is a distinct difference between information and knowledge. Information does not translate into knowledge automatically. So we need to have systems that this information that we are flooded with, how does it get converted into knowledge that is relevant to people's lives, which they are able to use and are able to translate them so that it is meaningful and they are able to make choices. The second thing, I think that is very, very important, which the survey also brought out very well, is that the youth, we are in the middle of what is called the demographic dividend in India, right? We are in that window of opportunity. The cohort is such that young people are the maximum, we have the maximum number of young people in the world. We call it a demographic dividend. Why? Because if we are able to channelize these people correctly, it will shape the future of our country. So how do we respond to the needs of the young and to these youth of our nation is going to determine the fate of our country. And the third thing that came out also again in the survey was this huge gender divide. It continues to persist in our country despite all efforts, and we are not able to somehow change that reality, and the library survey also reiterates this reality that is existing in our country. So having said all this, and our session is People Speak. How do we reposition libraries within the context of communities? So how do we see libraries as institutions of change, of those that can facilitate these three aspects that I'm flagging, that is what are the information needs, how young people can be catered to better and to their needs, and how can we get more and more women and young adolescent girls to become mainstream part of the library movement. For me, these are core because this is going to determine the survival of libraries and whether libraries will be able to survive in the future and take the shape. So having said that, I want to also then flag now, so what Ejaz was saying, that today we are in the midst, your survey is bringing out so well, that today libraries have to be repositioned as institutions where internet access, and because information is now available through the digital medium, Today, having availability of these network connectivities has to become now core as part of libraries functioning. So today, if I look at my own college library, there are less number of books and there are more number of computers in our libraries because computers have become the gateways to information. So within this context, today we need to look at how can we now provide more and more services so that are interfaced towards a digital medium, and how can we equip people to access this, and how best can librarians facilitate this particular aspect of this. The second thing that is important for me today is, which my professor, Mr. Jayarajan, was also mentioning, was we need to advocate issues of what a library is. But before we advocate that, we need to understand how do we perceive a library to be. It has to be a multi-stakeholder perspective as to what is the role of a library, what can a library do. So remember, India is so diverse. On one hand, we have urban centers like Delhi, versus if you go to rural areas, the contrast is so huge. So within this context, how do communities perceive what a library should be, what a library's role should be? And I think increasingly the IPLN movement has to ask and look at all stakeholders' perspectives and reconceptualize as to what the role of a library should be and what should it be doing. Your survey brings out very well that it is a center where people can socialize, it is a center where you can look for information, whether it is about jobs or it is about any other pressing needs in your life. And I think I really liked something that was coming up very nicely in the survey was that people want to socialize. And I go back to what I started with. Information only becomes knowledge when people discuss and deliberate information, when they can validate it with discussions and interpersonal contact. And I think it's clearly coming out in your... So if there is some news coming, people want to discuss it and understand that news in its perspective to their context and to their lives. Only then that information becomes knowledge. So if this is how people are seeing libraries to be, then we need to create ample spaces and we need to relook at how do we position it. We need to build a model of community libraries, libraries which is community-based, which has community ownership, where people have active stake in structuring how a library should be functioning, what should be doing more. Do we have young children? Do we need to have a program for young children more? Do we need to have for older adolescents? Do we have more older people in our population? Do we need to look at their needs? Because needs of people are going to vary and a library has to be responsive to that. And lastly, I just want to say is that when we talk of M&E systems, and the whole today's session, we were talking about data that is coming in, and we are talking about qualitative and quantitative data. But I think data can only be of value if it can help us to restructure. And data has to not be with us, but it has to be with the communities, it has to be with you. You have to be able to use that data and restructure and remodel what are the things that you would like to do in your library and how is it that you want to shape. So a one-fit-all model for all libraries in the country, we need to have a more flexible and a more dynamic view of libraries and how what they will be doing based on the populations that they serve. And lastly, the whole environment in India is, when we talk of funding and we are talking about programs, and there is so much of a buzz about CSR and corporate social responsibility and funds becoming available for that. So it comes with, according to me, it's a two-sided sword. On one hand, there is money available, but also they bring with them a lot of power dynamics and structures and a lot of viewpoints of ideologies that will emerge with it. Definitely, we need to explore the possibilities of linking up with CSR initiatives of various corporates, because our survey is clearly saying we need to have employment is a major concern of young people. They are looking for opportunities. If more and more corporates can be made to have stakes in libraries, perhaps it can suffice the needs of a community. So I understand well there are issues and power dynamics, but it is something that we need to reinvent. And lastly, what is the role of a librarian? Librarians are wonderful people who are doing an excellent job. The survey is showing this. You are all doing an amazing job. But I think we all need to change. We need to also remain flexible and open. So on one hand, you need to be skilled in doing monitoring and evaluation, and how can that M&E help you in restructuring your library, looking at your resources, what do you allocate spaces as well as resources for. On the other hand, you need to also have a community outreach kind of a program that you're publicizing your activities, getting more and more people to come into your. So the librarian, in the conventional role of a librarian, on one hand, you have to be familiar with technology, DELNet facilities, and all kinds of computerization. So this is the new age librarian we are talking about. So definitely we need to invest in building capacities of our librarians, looking at how we can improve their skill base so that they can, respond better to the needs of the community and what they are catering to, so that they can remain more responsive to the needs of the community. So if libraries are going to be institutions that are going to, we see libraries as institutions that are a core part of community processes and community processes of growth development, they have to also be responsive to the needs of the people. And as we reposition them, these are some of the aspects that we need to look at and we need to advocate. So we need to not only do community level advocacy where we need to work with people and understand them, but definitely we need to work with different stakeholder groups and we need to get them back into our folds. Lastly, I just want to close with one more thought. Today, I was part of another program where we are talking about the Digital India Initiative, where the Government of India is setting up what are called village information centers. And if the government is seeing them as information centers, then how do we link up libraries to the VICs that are coming up? Now, there are something called Suchna Preraks that have come up. Their job is to provide that interface in terms of knowledge that people need. So we need to have a convergence of what is happening, what the government is doing, and how do we reposition and reinvent ourselves so that the government will listen to us better. So on one hand, we need to have very strong research-based advocacy data, but also we need to reinvent ourselves, we need to reposition ourselves within the larger changing environment so that we remain relevant and responsive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Archana Kumar. Well, friends, we have really overstepped our time. I was wanting to have more discussion, but we could have 2 or 3 pressing questions from the audience. And the panelists, you can identify the panelists, and then we can, please give the, well, would you like somebody could give the mic? You can come up then. Speak here.
It's Sarwat Reza. I look after the British Council Library Services in Bangladesh.
Short question.
Yeah. What I understand from this session is what citizens talk about library is not about they are coming to our space and talk about us. It's all about engagement. So my point is the outreach. So how IPLM is going out from the library and engaging our target audience so that they can talk about the library services. So that's my question to the panel. Thank you.
Well, IPLM is, of course, doing outreach work. Definitely they are doing. And you want to add anything to that?
So it's a relevant point that services cannot be delivered within the 4 walls of the library. So in just giving a context, we recently did a training in JNK related to what kind of children's related activities we could do in the libraries, but the bottom line was not necessary within the libraries. So the need is that we need to go out, we need to carry these like activities related and have it done in the communities, not beyond libraries.
Any other question?
May I?
Please.
My name is Sandhya Shekhar. Dr. Archana Kumar, I
Just
think
speak
you
to
made
the mic.
I think Dr. Archana Kumar made a very, very valuable point when you said that data and research becomes meaningful when we base our decisions on it. I think that's an extremely valuable point. In that context, my question is to Ajaz. Ajaz, I'm just curious to understand what was the approximate capacity utilization of the libraries that you visited in your survey, number one, and when you spoke to the non-users, the non-believers. What was the perception you got in terms of maybe the main two deterrents to using libraries? And did you notice any variance in the responses when you sliced and diced the data? I mean, rural versus urban, and maybe in terms of the age, the younger versus the older population, so that decisions can be guided in terms of addressing those deterrents. You could begin with commenting on the current capacity utilization, please.
I could remember your second part of the question, which is what was the distinction between the response of the people within the rural and urban communities vis-a-vis who are these respondents, if I'm correct?
Yeah, what were the main deterrents to using the library?
So I can tell you the survey says we interviewed both about 50% of the users and 50% of non-users. We found that 50% of, and more than that, people don't know that libraries exist in their own areas. They don't have information, and partly because there's no signage available. So the library doesn't carry even a signboard. So, and then the second point, which I mentioned in my presentation, was also that they said they're busy with something else. So this is the non-user saying that I'm busy with something else. So the third point, which is very critical, is that they see the relevance of a college library as good as a public library. But the distinction here has to be made. So do we see college library as good as a public library? A, if yes, then obviously they will say we don't need to go to the public library. B is that what kind of services do we cater to the users in the libraries? So when we talked about users, they have concentrated mostly on four things, which even Mr. Parijat's presentation was very clear: borrowing books, visiting to a text section, visiting to a reference section. But beyond that, everything sliced down considerably. So if that is the case, then the food for the thought for all of us in this forum is that I would say, to me, if you have to make public libraries relevant from the non-users, even the conference says reaching the unreached part of it, then you don't have to rely mostly on these four services, because even the users say that they are not even sufficient to them. So if that's the perception and that's a reality at the same time, then we need to diverse from the services point of view at the same time, vis-a-vis making public libraries recognized to the people. So that's what we found in the library. I hope I answered the question. Offline? Yeah, thank you.
You can have a further discussion with him. As we have closing, we have. I would like to, at the end, just mention that a lot of issues have come up in this. This was a wonderful discussion, and presentations were very well made. We know that advocacy is very important, and new services are important. Libraries will have to move out of the chambers. Librarians, rather, will have to move out of the chambers, try to reach out to people, also know what they are wanting, and provide services to that extent. Extension activities are very, very important, and we have to see how support for libraries can come either from the government, corporates, or any other agencies. And I'm sure Pilar is here, and she will not abandon the IPLM. She will find some other sources, international sources too. This is a very important initiative that we had made, and I request you that all of us are trying to promote this issue, and the country needs it, rather developing countries need it. In the developing countries, this issue is going to be more and more serious, and we feel that the knowledge, quality knowledge, should flow to people, and we all have to work towards it. With these words, I conclude and thank the panelists who had made very remarkable contributions this morning. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaul. If I could request you to please present small tokens of appreciation to our panelists. Dr. Kaul, if you could please honor us by presenting small tokens. These are books that we'd like to present. We'll start with Mr. Chakraborty. Mr. Pradeep Narayanan. Mr. Ejaz Loan. Mr. P. Jayarajan. Mr. P. Jayarajan. Mr. P. Jayarajan. Dr. Archana Kumar. Dr. Archana Kumar. We have one for you also, Dr. Cole. Yes, that's for you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a break now for tea and refreshments arranged on the lawn outside. Please be back here in about 25 minutes for the next session. Thank you very much.